Welcome everyone, Math 103. We're working on section 5.2 today on factoring trinomials. Let's start with a warm-up. Go ahead and pause the video, and what we're doing with the warm-up is we want to find two numbers that multiply to get C and add to get B. So for part one, we want two numbers that multiply to get 15 and add to get 8. So we can look at certain pairs of numbers that multiply to get 15, like 1 and 15. Well, that doesn't work because they add to get 16. Well, how about 3 and 5? 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 plus 5 is 8. So there's your two numbers. In number 2, we want two numbers that multiply to get 6 and add to get -5. So C is a positive value. That means the two numbers either must be both positive or both negative. Well, which is it? Well, the sign of B tells us. Since B is negative, the two numbers have to be negative. So 6 can be found by multiplying 1 and 6, but that doesn't equal 5. How about 2 and 3? If we add together -2 and -3, we get -5. So there we go. -2 and -3. Now for this last one, we've got a C which is negative. That means one of the values has to be positive and one of the values has to be negative. If we look at the sign of B, B is negative. That means the bigger of the two numbers has to be negative. So with 14, we can have 1 and 14. Well, that doesn't work. How about 2 and 7? If we have -7 and 2, and we add them together, we get -5. -7 times 2 is -14, so there's your two numbers. Now we've seen foiling before. If we have two binomials like this, multiplied together, we're going to use the FOIL method. So first times first is x squared, outsides 2x, insides -5x, and last -10. And then we can combine like terms into x squared minus 3x minus 10. So this is what happens when we multiply two binomials together. What we're going to be doing is the opposite, factoring. That's taking things that are added or subtracted and turning them into things that are multiplied. So this way is multiplied, and back, this is called factoring. Factoring is turning things into factors. Factors are things that are multiplied together. So let's say we don't know what these two numbers are yet. And so we can just use variables for those, m and n. Now I'm going to go ahead and FOIL these two binomials together. So first, x times x gives us x squared. Outside, x times n and x. Inside, m times x or mx. And last, m times n. Now if we combine like terms, we can combine these two x terms together. That just means we have to add n and m together, put them together like that, and multiply them by x. So this step combines like terms. Now let's compare this with a real polynomial with actual numbers in it. So the coefficient on the x is 6 here, so that would correspond with n plus m. So if we add two numbers together, we get the middle coefficient, which is 6. Well, that middle coefficient in the general form of a quadratic is b, and that's where this b comes from. B is the coefficient on the x term. And over here, we have m times n. We multiply the two numbers together, we get 8, or the number, or the constant on the end. So that would be c. So what does this tell us? If we take these two numbers together that go into the binomials, and we add them together, that means we get the middle number, or the middle coefficient, b. And if we multiply them together, we get the constant, which is c. So that's why we did this exercise in the warm-up. Find two numbers that multiply to get c, and add to get b. Right, this will be these two numbers which are going to go into the binomials. So let's see how this works in practice. So to factor a quadratic trinomial, that's what this is. Remember, trinomial means three terms. Quadratic means it has a second power. These are going to turn into two binomials multiplied by each other. So in this case, we get x plus 6 and x plus 2. So for your term number 1, go ahead and FOIL these and confirm that they equal that trinomial. Alright, so when we FOIL, x times x is x squared, x times 2 is 2x, x times 6 is 6x, and 6 times 2 is 12. Combine like terms and we get x squared plus 8x plus 12. So it is indeed that trinomial. Alright, now we're going to factor x squared minus 5x minus 14. And in order to do this, we're going to find two numbers that multiply to get negative 14. So let's make a list of numbers that multiply to get negative 14. So here I'm going to list the factors of negative 14, and here I'm going to write their sum. So we could have negative 1 and 14. We could have negative 2 and 7. We could have negative 7 and 2. We could have negative 14 and 1. So there's a list of all the numbers that multiply to get negative 14. Now let's add them up. 14 and negative 1 is 13. 7 and negative 2 is 5. Negative 7 and 2 is negative 5. And negative 14 and 1 is negative 13. So now we look at the middle term. Look for b. b is negative 5. So here's negative 5, which means these two must be our two numbers, negative 7 and 2. So now we're going to take those two numbers and put them into the binomials. So that means the factored form is, we always have the x here, minus 7, put the number there, always have an x here, plus 2. Now, problems like this, we should always FOIL to check. So x times x is x squared. So write it down here. Outside, x times 2 is 2x. Inside, negative 7x. And last, negative 14. And when we combine these two together, we get negative 5x. And that matches what we start with. X squared minus 5x minus 14. So make sure you do that check to make sure that our factored form, when multiplied, brings us back where we started. Your turn, number 2. I'm going to factor x squared plus 5x plus 6. So I wrote down a list of all the factors of negatives or positive 6. So we can multiply two positive numbers together, or we can multiply two negative numbers together to get positive 6. Now, the sign on the middle term is positive, so these can't possibly be it. As you'll see, we get negative numbers over here for the sum. So in practice, if you've got a positive number for C and a positive number for B, you don't need to write down the negative ones. 1 and 6 is 7. 2 and 3 is 5, and we're trying to match 5. So here's our sum that's 5. That means our two numbers are 2 and 3. So this will factor into x plus 2 times x plus 3. And if we FOIL this, brings us right back where we started, x squared plus 5x plus 6. So there's part A. Part B, x squared minus 9x plus 20. So I've got a positive value here. So that means our two numbers have to be both positive or both negative. Our middle sum, the sum would be -9, is negative. So that means our numbers have to be negative. So I'm just going to write down the negative ones. So for 20, we got -1 and -20. We got -2 and -10. And -4 and -5. So the sum, we got -21 for that one, -12 for that one, and -9 for that one. We want to match -9, so our two numbers are -4 and -5. So those go into the binomials. X minus 4, x minus 5. All right, there's two more parts to this, C and D. Go ahead and work on those. So for this one, we want two numbers that multiply to get -12 and add to get 4. Since C is negative, we need one positive and one negative number. And B is positive, that means the bigger number is going to be positive. Let's see what happens when we add all these together. -1 and 12 is 11. 6 and -2 is 4. 4 and -3 is 1. So 4 is the match. So our two numbers are -2 and 6. So that's going to give us x minus 2 and x plus 6. Part D. So for this one, B is -5 and C is -24. So for this one, we got a -C, so we have to have one positive, one negative. The middle value, -5, is negative, so that means the bigger number must be negative. So we could have 1 and -24, 2 and -12, 3 and -8, 4 and negative 6. All right, let's add them up. Negative 24 and 1 is negative 23. Negative 12 and 2 is negative 10. Negative 8 and 3 is negative 5. Negative 6 and 4 is negative 2. So we're trying to match negative 5, so that's this one. So our two numbers are 3 and negative 8. So we get x plus 3 times x minus 8. Next example, x squared plus 3x minus 6. We want two numbers to multiply to get negative 6 and add to get 3. So there's all the numbers that multiply to get negative 6. So let's find their sums. We got negative 5, negative 1, 1, and 5. Now notice that none of these match the middle term b. What that means is this trinomial is not factorable. It's what's known as prime. So if you list all the factors of negative 6 and none of the sums equal that middle term, then it's a prime polynomial. Just write prime and you're done. Your turn, number 3. In terms of show and work, make sure you list all of the factors of C, write down all the sums, and then from your list, I'll be able to see that none of them match the middle term. Here we got x squared plus 12x minus 8. So we need two numbers to multiply to get negative 8 and add to get 12. So there's all of our factors of negative 8. Add them together to get their sums. We get 7, 2, negative 2, negative 7. None of these numbers match b, so that's a prime polynomial. Not factorable. Now in factoring, we need to factor it completely. And that means taking out any greatest common factor. And then once we factor, make sure that the binomials themselves are not factorable. So we're going to start by factoring out the greatest common factor. And that's where you should always start when doing any factoring problem, is see if there's a GCF that you can factor out. Three x squared minus 6x minus 72. Now if we try to factor this using this method, it's going to be a big mess because we've got this coefficient on the x squared term that's not 1. And we're going to look at a different technique next class, factoring polynomials like that. But for this one, we don't even know how to do it yet. So we're going to factor out whatever we can factor out. Notice that 3, 6, and 72 all have a common factor of 3. So we'll factor that out first. Let's see, that would be 24. Okay, now inside the parentheses, now we've got one that looks like the ones we've done before. So we can factor this. Here's C, here's B, We can factor this just like we did before, but don't forget the 3 at the end. We're going to have to include that. So now we want two numbers that multiply to get negative 24 and add to get negative 2. So we're going to have two oppositely signed numbers, one positive, one negative. And their sum is negative, so that means the bigger number should be negative. All right, so there's our factors of negative 24 with a bigger negative number. Now we'll add them together. You get negative 23, negative 10, negative 5, and negative 2. We're looking to match negative 2, so there's our two numbers, negative 6 and 4. So our fully factored form, keeping the 3 there, 3 on the outside. Now we got two binomials, x minus 6, x plus 4. Your turn, number 4. So we've got 3 even numbers. All have a common factor of 2, so we'll factor that out first. X squared plus 3x minus 10. So we're going to factor this thing now. B equals 3, and C equals negative 10. So we need two numbers that multiply to get negative 10 and add to get 3. We're going to have oppositely signed numbers because we got a negative here. B is positive, so that means the bigger number has to be positive. So here's all the factors of negative 10 where the bigger number is positive. Adding them, we got 9 here and 3 here. All right, 3 matches B, so there's our two numbers. So bring down the 2 on the outside. Then we got x plus 5 and x minus 2. Trinomials can be a lot trickier to factor if the x squared term is negative. So we can factor that out and turn it positive. We got x squared plus 3x minus 2. If we factor out a negative 1 from that trinomial, it has the effect of changing the sign on each term. This will become positive, that'll become negative, that'll become positive. All right, now I've got a regular old trinomial to factor, so this will be a lot easier to do. We need two numbers to multiply to get 2 and add to get negative 3. Well, that's negative 2 and negative 1. Keeping that negative on the outside, we got the negative of x minus 2 times x minus 1. Your turn, number 5. Part A. negative x squared minus 2x plus 15. So if we factor out the negative here, change the sign on all three terms, that becomes positive, this will become positive, and 15 will become negative. Now we need to factor this. We need two numbers that multiply to get negative 15. Adding a 2, we've seen that before, it's going to be 5 and negative 3. So negative, this is basically negative 1 times x plus 5, x minus 3. Part B, negative x squared plus 5x plus 36. So now we need the factors of negative 36. We need two numbers to multiply to get negative 36 and add to get negative 5. There we go. Okay, there's all the pairs to multiply to get negative 36 with a larger negative number because the middle term is negative. Now when you add these together, you get negative 35, here you get negative 16, we get negative 9, and negative 5. Trying to match negative 5, so there's our two numbers. So keeping the negative out front, we get x minus 9 times x plus 4. Here's one we have to combine the prior two techniques. We're going to factor out the GCF, and since we have a negative coefficient on the largest degree term, what we factor out is going to be negative. So a common factor of 3, 15, and 18 is 3, and make it negative on the outside. Now we can also factor out some variables. We have 4x's here, 3 here, and 2 here. We're going to pick the smallest exponent to factor out. So we're going to factor out negative 3x squared. All right, so inside the parentheses, then we'll take each of these terms and divide by the GCF. Negative 3x to the fourth divided by negative 3x squared is x squared. 15x to the third divided by negative 3x squared is negative 5x. Negative 18x squared divided by negative 3x squared is 6. So x squared minus 5x plus 6. Keep that one on the outside, and we've seen this one before. We need two numbers to multiply to get 6, add to get negative 5, that is negative 2 and negative 3. So x minus 2, x minus 3. And there's the fully factored form. Your turn, number 6. Two x to the third plus 6x squared minus 8x. So common factor of these, we got 2, 6, and negative 8. Common factor is 2. We also have at least one x in each term, so we can factor out an x as well. So we're going to factor out 2x. 2x to the third divided by 2x is x squared. 6x squared divided by 2x is 3x. Negative 8x divided by 2x is negative 4. Now we need two numbers to multiply to get negative 4 and add to get 3. There's all the factors in -4. Add them together, we get -3, 0, and 3. So here's our match with 3, so our two numbers are -1 and 4. So keeping the 2x on the outside. X plus 4 times x minus 1. All right, next one, -4x to the third plus 28x squared minus 48x. So we've got at least one x in each of the three terms, so we'll factor that x out. And each of these is divisible by 4. And we have a negative out front, the highest order term. So we're going to factor out -4. So -4x will be our GCF. Now we'll take each of these, divide by -4. -4x to the third divided by -4x is x squared. Positive 28x squared divided by -x is -7x. -48x divided by -4x is positive 12. All right, the factors of 12. Now we're going to need two numbers with the same sign, and the middle term is negative, so I'm just going to list all the negative ones. So we've got -1, -12, we've got -2, -6, -3, -4. The sum then will be -13, -8, and -7. -7 matches here, so here's our two numbers, -3 and -4. So bringing down the -4x, we're going to use these two numbers, so x minus 3, x minus 4. And that brings us to your term number 7. Part A. We have three numbers that are all divisible by 6, and we have at least one x in each term, so we'll factor out 6x. It gives us x squared minus 2x minus 8. So now we need two numbers that multiply to get -8 and add to get -2. That's going to be -4 and 2. So our final factored form is 6x times x minus 4 times x plus 2. Now this one is written in a different order, so to make a little more sense of it, to make it look like the rest, let's write it in descending order. Starting with the highest order term, that'd be -x squared. Next is the x term, so minus 3x, and positive 40 on the end. Right, now, let's factor out that negative. Change the sign on all three terms. So now we got x squared plus 3x minus 40. Now we need two numbers to multiply to get negative 40 and add to get 3. All right, so there's our factors of negative 40, where the positive term is bigger. Adding them up, 39 for the first one, 18, 6, and 3. So 3 is our match, so we want negative 5 and 8. So for this one, we're going to get negative out front, x minus 5 times x plus 8. On the last page, get some practice problems where the only way to learn math is by doing. So please go through all those practice problems, and I'm going to be writing the solutions here. I'm going to use a little bit of an abbreviated method here. I'm just going to write 45 here and list the factors below it. All right, there's our list of factors. 5 and 9 add to get 14, so there's our two numbers. So it gives us x plus 5 times x plus 9. There's our factors of 18. All right, we need opposite sign numbers. Bigger ones are negative. 2 and negative 9 add to get negative 7, so there's our two numbers. So we get x plus 2 times x minus 9. Number 10, x squared minus 11x plus 30. So here we have positive 30, middle is negative, so we need two numbers, multiply to get 30. They're both going to have to be negative, so we can add them together to get a negative number. So we got negative 30 and negative 1, negative 15, negative 2, negative 10, negative 3, negative 6, and negative 5. All right, here's our match, negative 6 and negative 5. These add to get negative 11. So here we get x minus 6 times x minus 5. Number 11, x squared plus 6x minus 16. So we got a negative number here, over here, so we have oppositely signed numbers as factors, and the bigger ones can be positive. So we can do 16 times negative 1, 8 times negative 2, 4 times negative 4. 8 plus negative 2 is positive 6, so there's our two numbers. So here we get x plus 8 times x minus 2. Number 12, negative x squared plus 10x minus 24. First thing we need to do is get rid of that negative on the x squared term. So we're going to factor that out. Get x squared, change the sign. Negative 10, change this to positive 24. Now we need two numbers to multiply to get 24, positive 24, so they're the same sign numbers. And the middle term's negative, so we're going to be multiplying negative numbers together. So negative 1, negative 24, negative 2, negative 12, negative 3, negative 8, and negative 4, and negative 6. So there's all of our negative numbers to multiply to get 24. Negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10, so that matches there. So keeping that negative on the outside, you get x minus 4, x minus 6. Number 13. So we have three numbers here, all divisible by 3, and we got a negative on that highest order term. So let's get rid of all that, and each term has a single x at least one x. So we can factor out negative 3x. Now inside the parentheses, negative 3x to the third divided by negative 3x is x squared. 36x squared divided by negative 3x is negative 12x. Negative 81 divided by, or negative 81x divided by negative 3x is positive 27. All right, now we need two numbers to multiply to get 27 and add to get negative 12. All right, there's our factors made up of negative numbers, because that middle number is negative. Negative 9 and negative 3 are the two we're looking for. So we get negative 3x times x minus 9 times x minus 3. Next up, 2x to the fourth plus 6x to the third minus 20x squared. All the coefficients are multiples of 2, so we can factor out a 2. And each term has at least two x's in it, so we can factor out x squared. So 2x squared is the GCF. All right, now inside the parentheses, 2x to the fourth divided by 2x squared is x squared. 6x to the third divided by 2x squared is 3x. And negative 20x squared divided by 2x squared is negative 10. All right, so we've seen this one before. And that gives us x plus 5 times x minus 2. Don't forget the 2x squared out front. Number 15. So 6 is a common factor of all three coefficients, so we're going to factor that out. And we have at least two x's in each one. So we're going to factor out the GCF, which is 6x squared. 6x to the fourth divided by 6x squared is x squared. Negative 24x to the third divided by 6x squared is negative 4x. And 18x squared divided by 6x squared is 3. Now we need two numbers that multiply to get 3 and add to get negative 4. That's going to be negative 3 and negative 1. So the fully factored form there is 6x squared times x minus 3 times x minus 1. So this is a crucial factoring technique that we'll be using in this chapter and the next chapter. So go practice.